Hi everyone! It's a pleasure to present you my work entitled Post-Optimization of X-ray Protective Shields for Staff Radiation Exposure Minimization, developed at Institut Hospitalo-Universitaire or IHU at Strasbourg in France. In the last decades, there has been an increase of the use of X-ray-based image-guided surgery. However, X-rays are ionizing radiations with possible long-term related pathologies with regular users such as interventional clinicians. So, constant care must be taken when dealing with such imaging modality, which is made difficult as radiations are invisible. The general guidelines on placement with regard to the X-ray system are known, but need to be practiced and reminded regularly for helping clinicians to acquire them as a reflex. So, radiation protection education is a pillar for X-ray use safety. Beyond these guidelines, clinicians wear individual equipment such as lead glasses, thyroid protection, and lead apron. But these protections do not provide a full coverage of the body to ensure a certain freedom in users' movement, and for instance, arms and head are not protected. In addition to wearable protections, movable protective shields can be available in the operating room. If wearable protections are intuitive to use because they fit the clinician body and do not request any particular placement choice, movable protections offer many degrees of freedom in special placements, which can make them not intuitive to use in order to maximize the protection for the clinicians. This works aims to provide a visualization of the realistic dose clinician's body can be exposed to in real operation conditions, and we particularly focus on the proper placement of external protective shields via numerical optimization. At IHU, we work in close cooperation with clinicians in the laboratory to understand their needs and requirements. In the same building as the laboratory, we have hybrid operating rooms like this one, where we can find an anti-Zigo C-arm, an operating table, and protective shields. In the present work, we aim at creating a realistic virtual counterpart of such an operating room that includes meaningful elements of the real operating room regarding radiation propagation. Our work is the continuation of Rodas et al. Work, where they estimated the patient and clinician's exposure and proposed to actively reduce the X-ray dose by numerical optimization of the C-arm's angle. The new angles are suggested to clinician along with the new estimated dose for the patient and the clinicians and the simulated X-ray image. The clinician can then accept or reject the suggestion of placement. Compared to this work, we improved the precision of the model by adding the effect of protective shields in the simulation in order to take into account this supplementary protection system. In the virtual operating room, the simulation of the patient and the clinician's exposure is done through a Monte Carlo simulation using a cone beam source with 100 million particles. A thoracic phantom is used to compute the scattering on the patient, and clinicians are modeled by boxes filled with water. Shields are considered as perfect and thus absorb any radiation impinging on the surface. In our virtual operating room, there is one shield hanging on the ceiling and one shield fixed on the table that will be placed optimally by numerical optimization. Our goal is to automatically optimize the position of the shields in the virtual operating room, considering that the patient, the C-arm, and the clinicians are fixed and the shield's parameters are optimizable. This task is challenging because Monte Carlo simulations are time-consuming and do not provide numerical gradients. Thus, we have chosen to use a well-known gradient-free algorithm called Nelda-Mead algorithm. In our experiments, we had decided to start from three configurations, namely anterior-posterior, where the source is under the patient, lateral, where the source is on the right side of the patient, and vascular. For each configuration, we place one clinician and the shields are initially positioned in a remote place. We optimize the position of shields to assess that the algorithm can by itself propose a shield position that stands in between clinician and radiation source. Here, clinician full body exposure is taken into account. After this first optimization, we simulate a small movement of the clinician and we optimize again to see if the algorithm can adapt the shield position, starting from the previous optimal position. In this configuration, the clinician is intentionally in a bad position on the source side. That should not appear during real operation. We can see that the clinician receives significantly fewer radiations when the shields are properly set and that the distribution of the radiations is not homogeneous. This emphasizes the fact that our approach is more reliable than would be a decision based on a single point dose measurement, such as provided by a dosimeter on the clinician torso, for instance. To summarize, we have built a software that simulates a virtual operating room and optimizes the position of protective shields. We demonstrated that for a particular operation configuration, we have decreased the clinician exposure up to 27%. The next step is to assess our optimization results with real dose measurements in our hybrid operating room. In the near future, we would like to combine the optimization of the serum angle done by Rodas et al. And the optimization of the protective shields. Eventually, X-ray simulations in an operating room will be used to build a teaching program for radio protection education and training. In particular, we will use the virtual reality approach based on Microsoft HoloLens to provide a functional and intuitive rule. Thank you very much for your attention. Please feel free to ask any questions.